Hi everyone, welcome back to the Perfectly Imperfect podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Minnie, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode today and hanging out with me. Today I'm going to talk about change and transitions because that is something I'm actively dealing with right now in my life when I'm recording this, and I feel like I just want to talk about it because I've been doing a lot of thinking about it the last few days and honestly for the last few years of my life. And for context, I've come home to Massachusetts and I'm, out of my own routine. I'm not in New York City. I'm in my mom's house. I'm in my hometown where there's so many nostalgic things around me and just reminding me of my childhood. So maybe that in a way I'm like triggered in that sense. And it's just bringing up some uncomfortable feelings of maybe some parts of my past that I don't love so much or weren't as pleasant to live through. Not saying I had a bad childhood, like I loved my childhood, don't get me wrong. I feel like every person who grows up deals with some sort of moments of looking back and realizing like, oh, that wasn't so great, but it helped shape me into the person I am today, so I'm grateful for it in that sense. But all that to say is coming back has been a bit more of a struggle than I thought it would be. I thought I was a lot further along in my mental health and recovery journey. But this just goes to show that recovery, healing journeys, mental health journeys, they're not linear. It's not a recipe. It's not a exact equation that you can follow and, input this and this and you're going to keep moving forward. That's just not how the body and the brain work. It ebbs and flows. Emotions are so sensitive and they can come out in different forms and, won't look the same every single time. And that's just something I'm learning to accept and I'm leaning into and trying to embrace. So I want to talk about that today because change and transitions is something that really triggers that for me and has been triggering my anxiety and my eating disorder specifically a lot lately. So I just want to talk about a few things that I've been doing to help myself through this time and remind myself that it's okay. It's all going to be okay. The anxious thoughts are not true. The eating disorder thoughts are not true. And I don't need to listen to them. And it does not need to take away from my time here with my family and seeing my old friends and all that fun stuff. So I am outside. If you hear some sort of birds or cars in the background, that's what that is. But this wonderful microphone hopefully is cutting out as much of that as possible. So the first thing I'm doing to kind of help myself through this anxious period of change and transition in my routine is identifying my fears. And this, to me, has been looking like journaling about them, writing them down, writing through my thought process around why I'm anxious about certain things, what irrational thoughts are coming up, and just getting it physically down on the page helps me so much. Like, you already know how passionate I am about journaling. I will link the journaling episode in the description and the show notes below as well if you want to listen to that afterwards. But yeah, I could go on and on about journaling, and I even have my own journal that I created and produced and designed if you want to purchase that. It's very much kind of a mental health gratitude prompted journal with over 200 prompts. I've been using that, honestly, to help me through this time, just flipping through, finding inspiration from the different prompts and finding ones that call out to me and writing about them. And just the act of writing down the things I'm fearing and the anxious thoughts that are coming up, it doesn't solve it necessarily, but it helps incredibly. Another way of identifying your fears is purely just thinking about them and letting yourself feel the feelings and feel the fear that your anxiety or your eating disorder or whatever is triggering these uncomfortable emotions. And just think about them and really think through, okay, what is this thing I'm fearing so much? And in my case, it's these moments of change and transition. So what about these moments of change and transition is making me feel so scared and terrified and small and insecure and uncomfortable? And obviously it's not the most comfortable thing to think about the things that you're scared of because you're scared of them. You don't really want to face them. But I promise you that facing them and thinking about them and kind of putting them in front of yourself is the only way to work through it. There's definitely the way to just bottle it up and forget about it, but I promise you it will come up later in some form or another when you're least expecting it and you're not ready for it at all. And that, I promise you, is 10 times more uncomfortable. So I'm reminding myself of that exactly and trying to face these things head on right now. Although it is uncomfortable, I'm with my family. I want to go see my friends. I want to be more social, but I'm trying to be really realistic with myself and not push myself past my limits or even to my max. I'm kind of staying in a comfort zone as of right now because I know that I'm highly sensitive to triggers right now. I'm very anxious. I'm on edge. And I'm just taking the steps that I need to work through this so that by the end of the week, I will be okay and I won't look back on this time of visiting home and seeing my friends as a really negative experience. Although, yes, there's been some low moments and some dips, it doesn't need to blanket the whole experience as negative and bad. And that's my main goal, basically. So the next thing you can do to help yourself if you're also anxious about change and transitions is to educate yourself on what you can and find ways to accept the things you can't know. So, for example, when I was coming to Massachusetts, to my hometown from New York City, I wasn't very, very anxious on the way here, but I noticed the second I got here, all these thoughts landed of like, how is this week going to go? What food is there going to be? What am I going to do day to day? Who am I going to see? Who should I not see? How do I feel about it? Just all these like anxious thoughts came up. I definitely could have done a better job, I think, of like educating myself or maybe preempting these feelings a little bit more. But it's hard to know how to prep yourself for these anxious moments when you don't necessarily feel it. But that's something I'm working on, is just trying to be a little bit more proactive about my mental health and, during moments of change, just be a little bit more kind to myself and prep myself a little bit more so that it doesn't feel so all of a sudden and surprising me with all these anxious thoughts, when really it shouldn't surprise me because it keeps happening every single time. I'm not in the routine of being very proactive about it, but this step will help me, and hopefully it helps you too as well, is just trying to educate yourself on the things that you can about whatever you're anxious about. So if you're going somewhere new that you've never been before and you're anxious about the food, for example, or you're anxious about what you're going to be doing, or the weather, what to pack, like all those things I get anxious about. So do your best to research what type of food is in the area. What are some options that you could eat? Is there something you can maybe look forward to trying, or look into the weather and, the different weather circumstances that are going to be happening. If you're going to visit family like myself, maybe text some people beforehand, text your mom. Like in my case, I was visiting my mom, so I just wanted to call her and get a plan of our days and what we're going to be doing. When I got here, I went to Whole Foods, I went to the grocery store, I got foods that I enjoy. So that was one less thing I could be anxious about, that there won't be any foods that I like in the fridge because it's my mom's house and not mine. But I eliminated that anxiety because I went to Whole Foods and I got the foods that I like. So just doing things like that, doing things where you can, educating yourself, filling yourself in, and giving yourself that necessary reassurance that everything is going to be okay where you can. And that is the key. Accept and do it where you can, but accept where you can't. Because there are things that are fully out of our control. And that's the hardest part with anxiety, I feel like, is just you want to know ahead of time how things are going to go, and your brain jumps to these extreme conclusions sometimes, and getting the facts and understanding how the situation is going to go, that really helps me personally. But in the moments where it's just impossible to do that, it feels impossible to quiet those anxious thoughts and rationalize those anxious thoughts because there's no actual substance or foundation to change those thoughts. Basically, my second point here is to try your best to accept the things you can't control and accept there will be things that you can't control. That is inevitable in every situation in life. And I know that's the hardest part, but working on that is so beyond helpful. The third way that you can work to stop fearing change and transitions and start to embrace it is to work on your own stress levels. And that is my personal main focus right now. Coming to Massachusetts, coming to my hometown for the week, I've really been thinking through how can I reduce my stress and kind of help myself through this process and this anxious process of change in my life right now. In the past, I have kind of dove into tasks and giving myself more to do and just felt like being productive was my way to cope with my anxiety. But really, I found that does quite the opposite, and it kind of heightens my stress and limits my ability to truly think through and think thoroughly about why my anxious thoughts are here and how to rationalize them. So this time I've been taking the counter approach, and I can say it's been working because I feel like I've been able to get to a place of balance and stability a lot quicker than I have in the past, but it has been anxious in the way that I haven't been really giving into those thoughts of wanting to be super anxious and productive and, use this time while I'm out of my daily routine to do more content, work on more projects, see every single friend, catch up with every single person that's here. And I've just been reminding myself that I don't have to do that. No one's holding me at gunpoint, telling me I have to do all these things. If anything, I've just been doing that to myself. So I've come inside because my mom needed to do some gardening and take the dog out, and it was just getting a little chaotic, which is okay. So I've come inside, and it was also getting hot, so here I am. But basically, to continue what I was saying is I'm doing quite the opposite right now. I am, instead of adding more to my plate and using this time to be as productive as possible and do all my extra projects as much as possible, I'm really cutting it back. Yes, I'm here recording a podcast episode, and I recorded another podcast episode with Gerard this week, but this type of content creation really is filling my cup, whereas I'm finding that short form content creation, stories on Instagram, TikTok videos, reels, all that kind of stuff has been stressing me out more than filling my cup lately, and that's something I'm finding hard to accept. But I'm kind of leaning into it and understanding that if my priority right now is to reduce my stress, I need to cut out those types of things right now. It doesn't mean I cut it out forever. Who knows? Maybe it does. But it just means that I'm going to pour more of my energy into what is filling me up right now, and that is long form content and this podcast. This doesn't feel like a chore. This is a fun activity, a way that I'm feeling fulfilled and feeling so much purpose. So I'm going to do it. And it's just really recognizing what type of activities make you feel that way versus the other way of feeling drained and stressed out. So this third point to stop fearing change and kind of embrace those moments of transition is to really lean on the things that fill your cup and make you feel good, and try to block out all of the outside noise and the outside influence of how other people fill their cup and how other people help themselves through these moments, because it's going to look very different for every single person. So you just need to remind yourself of that. And honestly, I found that coming off of social media, coming off of Instagram and TikTok has really helped me, which I feel like every single person says, but you don't really believe it until you actually do it yourself. And I can say it's really helped me just eliminate that comparison and eliminate my journey and my timeline to others so that I can just 100% focus on myself and be able to understand and really see what works for me and what doesn't. It's going to look different than the next person next to you. Try to lean into that and try to accept that it's going to look different, and this moment of change is going to affect you differently than another person. I feel like that was something I always struggled with as well, and I still do, is comparing how I react to certain situations versus others. Like with me and my boyfriend, for example, he'll just be super calm and chill throughout transition periods and changes. He could go anywhere and be anywhere in the world for any amount of time. And I'm not saying he wouldn't experience any stress at all, but he's generally pretty relaxed and comfortable and confident in himself. Whereas I become a train wreck and I'm just so anxious. I'm on edge. I'm overthinking everything. And I mean, I think that's why we work well, because we help kind of balance each other in that way. But I've dealt with so many moments of feeling so bad and negative about myself because I'm looking at him and thinking, oh, why can't I be like him? Why can't I be chill and relaxed and comfortable and confident right now? And we have different brains, we have different bodies, so I can't compare myself to him. I have to just understand and try to accept my own brain and how it works and work with myself, not against myself. So moving on to my fourth tip for how to embrace change instead of fearing it all the time is to remind yourself that life and change and events are ever changing. Nothing is ever constant in this world. No experience, no emotion, no situation. Like everything changes. Everything's in motion all the time, and nothing will ever be static. Anything that has energy is always in motion. I don't know the science terms, but I believe that's right. But just kind of leaning into that fact and really embracing the idea that nothing is ever permanent. These feelings, although they may be uncomfortable and anxiety-inducing right now, it will get better and it will go away. And contrastingly, when you feel great, you're on a high and you're feeling super relaxed and confident, you will have lower moments again sometime soon. So just leaning into that has really helped me a lot and helped me understand that even though this feeling feels so bad and so low and so negative right now, I will reach a time where I feel good again. And those good moments won't feel good without the lower moments, and just all those little reminders to myself. I feel like people say them all the time, and maybe they're kind of cliche at this point, but they are so important, and they really help me through situations like this, and they can honestly help you try to embrace change and understand that whatever change you're going through, whatever transition you're going through in life, it may feel uncomfortable right now, but it will get better. It will get better with time, and that's just a fact that things change. Maybe you'll get worse before it gets better, but it will change. It won't stay static forever. So moving on to my last and fifth point about how you can lean into change and embrace it instead of fearing it all the time is to lean on others and ask for help when you need it. This has been something that's helped me so much throughout just growing up in my life, but also has helped me so much in my anxiety, my healing journey, my recovery journey. I feel like I was never one to ask for help and lean on others. I felt like I needed to deal with uncomfortable situations and deal with everything by myself. But I realized there's only so much you can do by yourself, and there is a threshold that has a limit to what you can handle by yourself. And for some people, that's pretty high. For some people, that's pretty low. Again, it's very personalized, and there's no point in comparing how much you can handle by yourself versus another person because you're different people. You're not supposed to be able to handle the exact amount, same things. Learning to lean on others and ask for help when you need it, I view that as a sign of strength now. For a long time, I did view it as a sign of weakness. I didn't want to look like I needed help. I didn't want to look like I was inadequate or unable to care for myself and take care of myself. But once I started switching my mindset around it and viewing it as something pretty powerful and something that someone with confidence and self-assurance and a strong sense of self-esteem would do, that's really helped me a lot. And no, for sure, I don't feel confident and have a good sense of self-esteem all the time. That's something I'm actively always working on. But this little part of my healing journey so far, and just really cutting out all the negativity and the limiting mindsets around asking for help, has opened me up to so much more potential with how to, one, help myself and how to help others, and just understanding myself more on a deeper level of what I need in each moment and how others can help me and how I can help myself. So overall, this to say is that it's just a great thing to learn that you can lean on others. And if you're in a place where you don't feel you have anyone to lean on or you don't know who to ask for help, I found a lot of advice through social media, honestly. And as much as I was saying it's been a little bit toxic for me and unhelpful for me lately, I think the communities that are built and the professional advice that you can receive on social media and the resources and the knowledge you can obtain is just so broad. There's so much out there. But again, take that with a grain of salt, because there are so many things that are missaid and there's so much wrong information out there and things that are just not helpful. So, find a balance with it for sure. But all this to say is that even if you do feel alone, maybe there's someone on the internet who can help you feel less alone. And that feels so like Gen Z of me to say, but I have experienced that firsthand. Throughout my recovery, I felt so alone. I didn't know anyone else in anorexia recovery. I didn't know anyone else in my life that had experienced the same things as me. So then when I found this community online, I suddenly felt heard and seen and understood, and I started gaining so much more knowledge of how to help myself and how to move forward in recovery. So I guess that's just my personal experience. I know there's probably so many people who have gone down the route of finding and seeking advice online, and it counters their progress and doesn't help them. But this is just speaking from my experience, and that's something that's really helped me, as well as the real people in my life. I feel so grateful and fortunate to have had my boyfriend through this experience. I have my brother, my mom, my dad, my family members. They are supportive of me, and I feel loved. So they're people that I've learned to lean on. And again, I haven't always leaned on them. Even though I have felt loved and supported throughout my childhood and growing up, I still felt this need to do it by myself. But this is a reminder to myself and to you, hopefully, that you don't need to go through things alone. You're not, quote unquote, better, and you're not, quote unquote, weak for asking for help. It is a sign of strength and a sign of power and a sign that you want to understand and you want to get better and you want to feel better. So learning to ask for help and leaning on others when you need it is a power stance, I would say. So those are my 5 main points for how to kind of help yourself through moments of change. And if you're like me, if you experience anxiety around change and transitions, these 5 things have been things that I've been doing actively right now, and I have been working to develop into more strong habits that I want to further into just helping myself cope with anxiety and cope with harder moments in my recovery. So if you like this episode, I would love to hear your feedback. You can always leave a star rating and a review as well. It would be so wonderful, and that's kind of your best way to help support the show and support me. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at jenny.mini. You can find the podcast Instagram at perfectlyimperfect.pod. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can go listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. But if you're listening to this and you want to see a little video element, you can watch it on my YouTube channel, Perfectly Imperfect Podcast. The link is also in my personal YouTube channel as well. So you can find me all over, and thanks so much for being here again. I'm sending you all so much love, and I'll catch you in the next episode.